All right. Welcome back. Glad some of you stuck around. If you weren't in the room 20 minutes ago, my name is Marc Ross. I run a national environmental advocacy organization called Rock the Earth. We basically sue polluters in the government on behalf of rock stars and educate and activate people at concerts about those issues. We've got a booth down in the main area if you want to check us out or find me running around. This is a little bit out of my space. Usually I'm talking about the intersection of social consciousness and music, but it's really not outside my space because we are talking a little bit about the intersection of activism and music. So to my immediate left and your right, we have Taylor Denn, who, as Brandon indicated, is from eTown, a fantastic weekly radio show, performance space, activism hub. I'll let Taylor tell you more about it in a couple minutes. And next to Taylor, we have Dani Grant, who not only owns and runs the Mishawaka, but in her spare time also founded and runs a nonprofit called SpokesBuzz, which in essence works with artists and the community, especially in along the northern tier of Colorado with regard to the music scene. So we'll let them both tell you a little bit about their backgrounds. And why don't we start with ladies first? Dani, why don't we hear more about your background and what you do with SpokesBuzz?
SpokesBuzz was born from a question that came to me from people in the community, which was, how can we work on letting the rest of the country understand how much of an incredible musical asset we have in Colorado, and specifically for me, Northern Colorado. And when that question was posed to me, I looked around, and the incredible amount of musicians in our community that weren't being recognized or weren't a part of the daily fabric of Fort Collins or Colorado seemed a shame to me. So a bunch of like-minded, crazy individuals and I decided to get together and see what we could do about developing those artists and creating opportunities nationally to present those artists and try and create more of a buzz about what was happening in Northern Colorado for a couple of reasons. One, to develop the artists, and two, to help develop the economies that were supporting them in Northern Colorado. So the more kind of understanding and awareness that's out there about this community, the more activity, the more interest, the more venues would grow, the more opportunities would be there, the more acknowledgement that the musicians would get specifically. So that's where SpokesBuzz came from.
And what about you? How did you get into music?
I've always been a music person. I realized in college that I was not a good musician myself, but I loved it so much and I wanted to figure out how to stay involved. So after many years of small business, I finally found my way back into the music community through running festivals and creating smaller platform stages for artists. And this is the place where I felt the most at home. I was raised by a business person and an artist. My mother's a visual artist, a painter, and I spent a lot of time translating between the two of them on what they were talking about. And I found that musicians are often given this, there's an assumption that they can't be strong business people because they're so creative, and that's just not the case. Sometimes you just have to use the right terminology and help them realize what aspects of their business they need to focus on in order to be more successful. So.
And one last one for now. On a fun personal note, what are some of your musical heroes and influences that made you want to work in music? Because at the end of it, people that want to work in music are influenced by music.
I mean, I'm a big fan of a lot of different kind of music. I'm a Pixies fan. I'm a Chrissie Hynde fan. And that was kind of like back in the formation. I think, the cover bands that I was in high school were all kind of around that, and Stevie Nicks and that kind of thing. I think activism-wise and advocacy-wise, I'm more impressed by some of the bands that are out there, like Flowbots and other bands like that have really focused on lending a hand to other artists out there. So those are kind of the contemporary heroes.
Taylor, what about you? Where did you come from? How did you get involved in eTown? And then what is eTown?
So I'll start off with just how I got involved. I mean, I grew up in a musical family. My parents met in Berklee School of Music and went on the road, and I kind of ended up touring with those guys. And when I graduated high school, I had kind of the option of figuring out what I was going to do or going on the road with the Guthries because my mother was working with them. And I took that option.
Sorry, and the Guthries being Arlo Guthrie and his
Arlo
daughter.
And Sarah Lee and Johnny and all those guys. So I got to tour with them for a year, and that kind of got me into the music industry. And that gave me a taste, and it definitely was something I was interested in. And moving to Boulder in 2010, I had a chance meeting with Nick and Helen and sat down and had a conversation, and there was a lot of similar kind of vibes, and it was kind of one of those things like, let's try it and see what happens. And here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, of course, Nick and Helen Forster,
Yep.
the founders of eTown. And of course, working with the Guthries, you weren't immune to working in activism or at least in social consciousness either, because they are a socially conscious family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, living at the Guthries' house, hearing stories about, refugees coming up to the house with guns and trying to pull Arlo out and, get him to quit making music and all these things. And, it's always been very tied, just being around it in the family and just seeing how big of an effect music can have when it comes to activism and change and getting people together to really hear something.
Yeah, I can imagine that was probably a seminal part of your background, just having that experience,
Absolutely.
working in that legacy family of activism. Besides the Guthries, what were some of your other influences musically that made you want to work in music?
Musically, growing up, my parents were on the road. They were musicians. They played a lot of Texas boogie-woogie kind of swing music. And that was really fun. But the first music that I heard that really grabbed me was Talking Heads. I remember being in the tour van, and they would always play, a lot of singer-songwriters and folk singers. And I remember one time Talking Heads came on, and I just perked up. It was like, oh wait, I think I know why you guys do this. That's really different. And went in a lot of different directions. I think when I was in high school, my favorite type of music was hip hop, and I've gone through so many different genres, and I kind of stay that way, which has been good.
Dani, about SpokesBuzz, can you talk a little bit about, we talked generally about it, what are some of the things that SpokesBuzz does and some of the accomplishments you've had over it's a 5-year organization or 10-year?
Yeah, we're going into our 6th year actually. Yeah. So the core is the Incubator, which is a 2-year residency program for artists that compete for 6 slots every year to join us and go through 2 years of education and business training and being connected to people in the industry that can help them grow their businesses. And so that's really the core of that. And through that development, we see artists, rising up and creating more and more opportunities for themselves, and in essence, promoting where they're from and promoting the musicians that are coming from the area. And then we've also done some national events. One is the Colorado Music Party at South by Southwest, which started with 5 musicians at South by, 5 bands that we brought down there and a $10,000 budget. And then last year we were at 143 performance slots over 5 days and 5 nights with over 100 Colorado musicians showing up at South by to represent, which was an incredible opportunity to see that much Colorado at South by. We were like having a birthday party during their wedding. It was amazing. And then also Band Swap, which is it's a music exchange program where we work with other cities across the country to develop opportunities for a reciprocal band exchange. So we'll go out to Madison, Wisconsin, meet a band out there, bring a Colorado band to them, host some events there, and then share a fan base in Madison with our Colorado musicians, and then bring that band back to Colorado, do the same for them here. And along the way, train bands how to do that successfully, how to create more and more opportunities, social media, sharing content with other bands, and trying to develop a relationship, which we've seen blossom over time, all those relationships.
And Taylor, eTown, I think most people, when they think of eTown, they think of the radio show. They turn on their radio weekly and they hear this show where they are in Boulder and they get to go watch a recording. Can you talk a little bit beyond just the show, which is pretty remarkable? It's been around for a number of years.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments of eTown and also maybe some of the other aspects that people don't know about?
Mm-hmm. So eTown's a very unique organization, which was founded 25 years ago, coming this April. So it's been around for a long time. And it was created, by people who are very much a part of the music industry. Nick Forster being a part of Hot Rise, which is a very influential bluegrass band with a lot of Colorado roots, and Helen Forster being involved with Telluride Bluegrass and the Planet Bluegrass people, and helping kind of bring that festival up from a young start. And they started eTown really because they saw that there was a missing link when it came to radio. Which was, you have all this attention and you have all this information, and why not use it to spread the good word, get people to, treat people better, do better things for the environment. And really it was created around that. So eTown uses the music to really pass the idea of sustainability and how we can be better and all of those things. eTown's done a lot in terms of helping with major elections in the past. We had a big Democratic convention a couple years ago where we had James Taylor and Ani DeFranco and Graham Nash and a bunch of people play. And it's kind of all over the map. We do a lot of road shows. We just did a big product. We just did a big show at the Natural Products Expo out in California, which was for GMO labeling, which we brought in Ziggy Marley and Amy Mann and did a taping there. So a lot of road shows as well, interacting with different communities. And
Can I also add that I love the way eTown highlights local people doing incredible things. So
Well, not just local, they bring in people from around the country or call them up on the phone.
Yeah.
And
Right, yeah.
The
little
Achievement
guys.
Award is a whole
yeah.
is a whole nother thing. You want to talk a little bit about why that's part of the show
Sure.
and
So-
what that is?
So the Achievement Award fits into every show, so there's always two acts that come together. Normally it's kind of an act that's been around for a long time that has a lot of following, and then a smaller act that pairs well. And then in between those acts, there's something called an Achievement Award. And people are able to nominate someone in their community for something good they're doing. And what we do is we either fly them in or we call them up on a line and are able to talk to them about what they've done and what they've accomplished, get some information on numbers. And what it really does is it puts these people in the limelight where they can really get more funding, they can get really great connections, because there's 1 million listeners for eTown, and all of a sudden they find out that there's someone who's cleaning up garbage in the beaches of Oregon and making sculptures, and taking all that garbage away from the beaches. And people want to, support and fund, so.
Nick once said to me, it was funny, with regard to my organization, we're an activism organization that works in music. And Nick said, you guys are just the mirror image of us, because we're a music organization that works in activism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In terms of, I lost it. How many stations are you on now at this point?
I think eTown's carried on 300 stations, and then also our podcasts, and then we have a lot of Vimeo and YouTube followers. I think there's 10,000 subscribers on YouTube.
And you also have a beautiful new space that Brandon had mentioned.
We do, yeah. We built we bought an old church in Boulder, Colorado, and put in $7 million in renovations. Made it one of the greenest venues in the country with 236 solar panels, all natural gas, all LED lights, and we're able to run shows there and actually tape just off the grid, and we actually sell energy back to the city. So it's amazing to be able to have all of that in our space and do that.
And it's a community center as well. Other
It is.
groups use it. It's not just a music space.
It is. I mean, there's a recording studio there. There's rental space. We've done plays, comedy nights. I have another promotion company that's called Mantis Made that does electronic shows there that are paired with visual arts. I mean, there's such a wide range. There's also permanent art installations that are always changing, and
Well, let's get to the heart of it. It's interesting, and we talked about this just before this session. What I find interesting is that we've got two organizations here that both are nonprofit and both work in music, or three if you count mine, and they're all based in Colorado. What is it about Colorado that makes this normally for-profit, massively for-profit industry make people want to form nonprofit organizations here in Colorado? What makes Colorado so ripe for that kind of thing going on?
I think one of the big things that comes to mind is, Colorado, one of the first things I noticed when I came here was Colorado was a state where people stood up and spoke when something wasn't correct. When something didn't work for them, or they saw that in the future it wasn't going to work for them, there was something said about it. And living in a lot of different states, there's just a different mentality of, we're not really in control of that. We don't really have the ability to shift the bar. And in Colorado, that felt different. And I think Colorado also has a very strong tie to music, with music being such a big part of the community. And I think people realized, long ago here in Colorado, that these two things can work together in a very synergistic way, and they can really just make both stronger,
And I would add that we, daily living in a beautiful place like this, that you get reminded that it's about more than just you and the car you drive and the house you live in. And I think it's a place where people who love that come together, and I think it's an easy place to gather people who want to do more than just make a buck. In some areas, I think people kind of get in that rat race. But I've found here that many people find advocacy or making change or growing things much more rewarding necessarily. You know, everybody wants to have a comfortable living space and that kind of thing, but I think just living in this majestic space draws people like that.
And I also think too, just something reminded me from last night, Colorado is one of those places that's very eager and hungry for music. And Colorado tends to be a place where bands break, a lot of times not even from here. You know, last night at the end of Polish Ambassador's set, he even said, you know, he's from California. He's a huge part of the California Burning Man community. But he said at the end of his set, you know, you guys in Colorado, you knew that there was something cool here before anybody else, you know, and he said, you guys knew it and it's special. And I see that a lot here. There's a lot of bands that come and they might play 200-seat venues a lot of places, but they'll come and they'll play the Ogden here, or they'll play really big venues, or they'll be the third act on a Red Rock show.
Or a band will come here and visit, and all of a sudden the band starts moving here, like Infamous String Dusters or Green Sky Bluegrass or
Lumineers.
Right. There are a number of bands that just decide they want to move to Colorado.
Yeah, Denver's a good airport if you're flying out all the time.
Right. We want to have this as a dialogue and a discussion, and want you all to take advantage of these guys that have a lot of knowledge. Do you guys have any questions out there that you might want to ask about this thriving music community here? Otherwise, we can talk about, you know, bands and what's coming and all that. Yes.
I have been blessed to be a part of the Indigenous communities here for 10 years, and they're interested in coming together to create a place where they can all bring their musics together in one sort of gathering or festival, not like a rise, but its own flavor. And you being steeped in the music world, what would you recommend would be the best way for them to start?
Recommendation, just for the record, because I know we're recording the session, the question was, with regard to the Indigenous community, what would you recommend in terms of someone that wanted to bring the Indigenous community together with their own gathering?
I'm thinking you're saying like musicians and how do they grow themselves and how do they create connections and that kind of thing. And one thing I'll say about this community is it reminds me a lot of kind of the Northwest back in the start of Nirvana time, where you have a ton of musicians and there is competition on how many stages there are to play, but the fabric of the music community is so compatible and ingrained and open. So it's something that I think is very unique, and it comes maybe just from the lifestyle and from an approach that we've all grown to love and count on. But I think getting out and meeting musicians here, local musicians, regionally touring musicians, is very easy. Everybody's out and about and very welcoming and open. So I think if you make some connections with some artists and pick up the phone, get on Facebook, or however you want to connect, I think the musicians community is very open to that. They're open to people sitting in. I see a ton of, you know, band members playing in all sorts of different bands, and you know, the violinist from Stella Luce will hop on and play with another band and record an album with them. And so I think it's about reaching out and asking, because I think it's a super open community.
I would add there's other resources as well, like the Colorado Music Summit is a great gathering in Denver every year now. I think it's in its third year, maybe.
Denver Music Summit.
The Denver Music Summit is another good gathering spot. And there are those different gatherings as well. I don't know if you guys do anything up in Fort Collins that gets people together, or SpokesBuzz sponsors events up there.
I think there are a ton of opportunities to come to sessions like this in Colorado. You know, there are artist development sessions that take place during Bohemian Nights in Fort Collins and during FOCO MX and during the UMS in Denver, the Sesh. You know, very often there are places where you can connect where people who are really ingrained in the industry are there ready to meet people and talk to people. I think there's just a ton of that opportunity out there. And if you connect with an organization like SpokesBuzz and just ask, like, where can I learn about these things? Where can I meet other people who are trying to learn about it? I think it wouldn't take more than 3 or 4 touches to find kind of the start of the path.
More questions?
I got it.
What's coming up next for SpokesBuzz? What's in your 5-year plan for what's on the horizon?
It's interesting. We have been spending a ton of time and money doing a lot of national events. We've been working with the state of Colorado and Colorado Creative Industries on a lot of that stuff. And so we've gotten really kind of out in the national scene. And this year, through our strategic planning, we've talked a lot about how do we pull back and really put a ton of energy into the bands that are in our incubator. There are 12 bands in our incubator that are incredible, aspiring acts that we want to put a lot of energy into. So we're kind of pulling back into our incubator this year and trying to create a lot of momentum for those bands. And I think we'll continue developing that artist development stuff. We've got a partnership with Colorado State University where we're trying to create a really affordable baseline system, an educational system where people can learn, like you're asking, how to, agency representation, business entity law for musicians, and trying to create about 16 to 20 classes that people can take through CSU where they can be in their own space and learn a lot of things before they start going out and having conversations. So that's an exciting partnership that we've started with CSU.
Do you ever partner with any of the national organizations that do that kind of work, like Music Matters or air traffic control, that helps advise musicians with regard to health care and financial planning and basically maneuvering through the waters of the music industry?
We've worked with Music Cares, and we definitely, we're a voice to the artistic community, and so we are aware of a lot of those organizations, and we are a referral system. We hope to try and connect people to some of those great agencies that are out there. And we've worked with Sound Diplomacy, and in terms of advocacy, we do a lot of public speaking and that kind of thing in terms of artists' rights, residency programs, artist housing, that kind of stuff. Because as we've done all this work to create momentum and a lot of attention and buzz about the music scene, along with that can come some gentrification and some threat to the artistic community. So we've got a lot of focus on how do we support those artists to be able to continue to survive in their home community while we're making it really happy, famous. Everybody moved to town. Artists are going to have to leave. They'll be in Loveland.
Taylor, I know that Nick and Helen for the last decade have been consumed by the eTown Hall, and that was really their main goal. What now? Now that they have the eTown Hall, what's in the next 5-year plan for
it's
eTown?
funny, you can't seem to stop Nick. I mean, the second eTown Hall was finished, he pretty much got Hot Rise back together after not having a record in 25 years, and they've done over 50 dates this year, headlining over 15 or 20 festivals around the country and Canada. And they're in Europe next week, and they're all over the place doing that. So he just keeps going. But now that we have our own space, we're able to really focus on our curation a little more. Using the Boulder Theater, it was a little more dependent on, okay, we need to hit this nut, because obviously with 1,000 tickets versus 200, you don't want to have a show that doesn't have 1,000 people in there. So with eTown Hall, it enables us to really say, this album's coming out, this album's coming out, this is a good pairing, let's go ahead and make the show happen and get it to air. In eTown's future, right now we're ramping up for our 25th anniversary, so we're going to close out with a really great fall. We just had AAA conference, which is one of the largest radio conferences in the country. That was in Boulder this last week, that just wrapped up yesterday. And we did a show with Ben Folds and a new artist named Greg Holden, who I just spaced on for a sec. But both of those guys are very hot in the radio world. And then next week we're at Red Rocks with Brandy Carlisle and Anderson East and Gregory Alan Isaacoff. So it's busy and just kind of keeps rolling, and we keep making content and rocking away.
And of course, both Brandy and Gregory are activist artists as well, which is a nice tie-in.
Yeah, very much so.
Sure we don't have any other questions from anyone? Great. In the back. Will eTown and SpokesBuzz ever, they are right now. Will they ever collaborate on anything beyond this?
We do, through promoting eTown shows and promoting SpokesBuzz. So in fact, the way I connected with eTown first, Roger Manell, who was with eTown for a long time, came over and worked for me at Mishawaka when Taylor came on at eTown. So we're very integrated, and we should do something cool.
Let's do it.
Let's figure out.
Yeah. Let's do a taping at the Mish.
Yeah.
There you go. Right here.
I play in a group in Durango, which is a nice crossroads as people come up through Arizona and New Mexico, so we get a lot of draw through there, and that we're locally based there. So my question is, what that way? How do we help other artists coming from the Southwest through Durango up to the next level? I mean, beyond branching out, is the incubator a non-local thing, or is it focused mainly on the locals, or?
That's a great question, and it's something that have we met before? I think we've met before, so I think we've talked about this. One of the things that we would really like to do as we're bringing focus back into Colorado is create more opportunities for mini tours and making connections between some of the towns, Pueblo, Durango, a lot of the towns that brought artists to the Colorado Music Party last year. That was a great way for us to connect with them. And we're also working with the creative districts in Colorado to make connections with their performing arts centers and their arts councils and arts cultures to see if we can generate some interest for them to start putting some more money behind local music and that kind of thing with the data we collect and with the positive reinforcement we're getting from the state saying, hey, this is a great thing to kind of channel some of your funding into and help support local artists. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and you should keep reminding me to get on that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I work with Durango Master Productions and then our group as well. Should we send out contact emails and if you ever need someone coming from the Southwest, hit up Massive and we can give them a home, a place to stay as they're working their way up towards you guys?
Let's band swap in Durango. Yeah, I'd love that.
Okay, I'll ask another question. You both are involved in booking talent, and I know this is kind of like saying, who's your favorite kid? Do I like this kid or that kid more? But what was your favorite booking that you've had at your respective venues?
This season, I would say Xavier Rudd was my favorite this season so far. I really enjoyed that show. I don't know if you know that artist, but for me, we book a lot of national acts, a lot of local acts, and one of my most favorite things is finding incredible performers with, good business sense and also super kind people. And that band was super kind, smart, and incredible performers, and their fan base was incredible too. So, and I say it's probably one of the top 5 shows I've seen at Mishawaka. And then for locals, we put a ton of locals up on stage, and that's actually was the impetus for my acquiring Mishawaka, was because it was such an incredible local artist platform that was not being utilized to its full effect. And so this year, seeing the Yoppers open up for Lucero was an incredible day for me. They really killed it.
Xavier Rudd, also a very activist artist, winner of the 2015 Rock the Earth Planet Defender Award. Fantastic artist if you haven't seen Xavier Rudd. He was here last year or 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. What about you, Taylor? Most favorite booking?
Oh, man. The first one that comes to mind, really, just because it was so out of the spectrum of eTown, and because I worked on it the longest, and because my boss told me to stop, and he said that if I said the word of the band again, that he would just scream. But he was into having them on eTown, and it was the hip-hop group Atmosphere, who's a really, it's hard to even say hip-hop because the singer Slug is really is a poet in his own right, and the music is a mix of spoken word with hip-hop, and it's such a creative process. But it was really an amazing thing because it was 3 years of kind of back and forth, like, yeah, we'd love to do it, and it's like, cool, then come do it. And then 3 years later, it happened. And I think the thing that made it so special was they performed their new single for the first time in front of a live audience for eTown in a 200-seater where they sell out Red Rocks every year. And it was just totally surreal to see it. This is the first time this song's been heard, and it's going to be on the radio through us. And that was a really pretty cool experience.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised that yet another activist band, or a band with activism
very
within,
much so.
that 2 of your favorite performances were activist bands when we're here at an activist festival. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Should give everybody hope about the music industry for people that are a little bit sour on it. Well, all right. Well, I think you guys will be sticking around for a little bit, so if you all want to have any one-on-one time with Taylor or Dani, we'll be around in the back. And thank you all for taking out some of your time from the music today to hear us yap a little bit about the music industry and activism. Thanks. I'm Marc Ross with Rock the Earth.
Yeah, thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you.